And we are rolling with James True, author, and what do you call yourself? A sophist?
That's right. American philosopher and a sophist, a practicing sophist.
All right. Well, last time I forgot to ask you some basic questions about yourself, and I was really just listening to some of your videos, and I'm like, what in the heck was he like as a kid? Like, for real? What did your mom do with all this brain power?
I think I was just like any other kid. I had more calories for ideas, maybe. So yeah, it led to some pretty interesting late night discussions. I don't think this is exclusive to me, so I don't like saying this about just my childhood, but also there was some psychic abilities
Oh,
that
interesting.
but I don't think that's exclusive to me.
No, no,
I
yeah.
think all of us have
A
this.
lot of kids.
Yeah, and so I don't like talking about it because I'm afraid people will hear that as, "Oh, there's only certain." That's not how it works at all. So, but I did have those, and I'm conscious of those. I've had experiences. When I went to church and Sunday school said, "Ask Jesus in your heart," and I did. Like I felt an essence. I felt a Holy Spirit come into my body. Like it changed me. I went home and told my folks, and they were like scratching their head. They were like, "Look, you're not supposed to." What do you mean? There's a Holy Spirit? What do you like? They weren't like discouraging it.
Right.
I think that they felt that I was maybe taking a little bit too seriously. And
Yes.
so if anyone has accused me of anything, it's been taking every single experience that's on my plate just like way too seriously. Like just like way like this is the most important colossal thing we can do right now. So it comes down to what I was like as a child is I think I just had a lot of calories, like a lot of plasmatic imaginary calories to spend, and I did so lavishly.
Yeah. Were you a big, like, reader, like, supposedly that I don't believe Elon Musk read,
I don't.
encyclopedias for your free time?
So it's interesting. Today I was thinking about when I was growing up, there were people that had magazines about skating, and then they were skaters. And sometimes there were people that kind of try to do both, but they really were just phoning it in. And so I think over half the experiences that I've had in my life were personally just doing, touching, tangibly experiencing things, and the other half were maybe spent reading. But
Okay.
most of the reading that I did, I was usually embarrassed about what I was reading. It was usually kind of it was considered shady, some of the
Oh.
things that and I'm not trying to say, "Oh, look how cool I am because 'cause I'm reading Dostoevsky or something." No, I'm
Right.
talking about, like, Judy Blume. Like, I'm talking about just, like, reading things that I just was like, "Holy jeez,
I
this is."
didn't even read Judy Blume.
Yeah, it to me, that writer actually was really influential on me, and because it was showing me a side of humanity that
Never
I'd never
seen.
be able to understand, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I am an avid reader, but it's not something that I share a lot of because a lot of the things that I read, I would get picked on or made
Right.
fun of
Which
or just
probably still happens.
marginalized. Yo, yeah, that happens now, but I don't really notice. Like it's still there, but at the end of the day, someone's trying to make fun of you because you read something, and so it's just kind of like, okay, this is, why am I even here? So am I well read? Probably not as much as I could be. I didn't have the path where I could go on into like masters in education or a PhD. I basically just had my undergrad, and then I was just out in the world experiencing things. But since then, I've certainly self-taught my way into employment and software programming, and being an author now, and being, even what I do now is a
Yeah.
lot of those things. So it's just a different world. I don't really learn through contextual memorizing and regurgitating. I
Right.
love reading. I'm an author, but it's not really been my main flux for like how to immerse and more importantly how to find myself.
Well, I was just so curious because you've said so many odd things that are just the the most random, true information that I've ever heard. Like one of the more recent ones. Well, anyway, it kind of blows my mind, and I was curious if it's more like your personal research that you're expressing now, or is it just an amalgamation of everything that you've ever been in your whole life?
I guess it's both. I don't know how to separate those two. I
Yeah.
don't think that I don't have the same illusions about objectivity or rational reason as being an anti or a pre-human thing, like it's something that's separate from humanity, and then the ones that we say are with it are the ones that have pure rationality or objectivity in their court. I used to think that way. It was a
Yeah.
very there are good guys and bad guys.
Hmm.
When I was in the white hat, black hat mode of thinking, I believed in objectivity in an outward world where devoid of all humans, there would be an essential truth.
Right.
And I've just talked myself out of that just simply because I just kept searching as hard as I
Right.
could for it, and I
Right.
kept finding that, oh, it's not here either.
There's some more. There's some more. Well, so let's just, I won't say like in your whole lifetime, but this is my last question for you. Um, just let's say in the last 10 years, how many times have you changed your worldview, so to speak?
In the last 10 years,
Major
yeah,
changes like, oh, I used to be New Age and now I'm Christian,
yeah,
or big changes.
yeah. So like 10 years ago, I was corporate freelance software engineer, um, pinnacle of monetary wealth, pinnacle of working for myself independently, traveling all over the world, writing code that no one else has seen, like really exciting stuff. And then ready to start a family, I get married, and then like 3 months later, everything crashes in front of my face. I
Oh
won't go
wow.
into details, but it's
Right.
some of us are meant to get married, some of us are meant to get divorced, honestly. And both of these are, or I think,
Unfortunately, I'm in the
are,
second crowd. Okay.
yeah, I think both these are spiritual experiences.
Yeah.
And um, the if you can handle the divorce, then it's an opportunity to change things. And if
Right.
you can't, then it ends up being a source of trauma or failure that kind of exists over time. So you get to kind of pick and choose what you want. Carmen, I hate to stop, but it feels like there's an echo. I am so sorry to interrupt.
No,
I'm
that's all right.
wondering if I have a browser window open, or maybe
I don't hear an echo. Is it me echoing or you?
it's me echoing. Yeah. So I'm hearing myself repeated, and
Is
I'm
your echo off
uh,
in your stream settings? Let me check mine too. All right, I just turned mine.
okay. Something is very better now.
Okay,
Something is miraculously better.
yeah, I adjusted the echo cancellation.
Okay, great, great. Thank you
So
so
sorry
much.
about that.
No, that's okay. I'm glad it wasn't. Okay, good, good. So, where was I?
How many times have you changed in the last 10 years?
Yeah, so I'd say a lot because I thought that the pinnacle of what I was here to do was to start a family. I really wanted to start a family. Like I said, 2 months in, 3 months in, just the whole thing blew up. Why? I think I had poor boundaries. I think I didn't understand discernment. I think I was living in a world of lies, but I wasn't willing to sort of embrace that truth. So I just kind of went along with it. But
Mhm.
I'm also very dishonest about my threshold. I was back then. I was saying, "Oh, I can put up with anything," and no, I can't. I have a very distinct layer where after a certain amount of bullshit, I just go crazy. I go schizophrenic, and I can't take it anymore. So I was fronting that.
Mhm.
I was fronting that, and I wasn't aware of how many lies were around me on purpose. I was what I call white belting. I was using ignorance as a defensive mechanism to succeed in the world. And luckily, I got divorced. Luckily, that all crashed before there could be a family. This is all seriously. These are all just beautiful blessings. It really kicked off a new rebirth in me. And I emerged as a columnist, someone who was not writing software, but I was writing. I mean, I'd always been writing in the background, so
Right.
it's not a new hobby for me. But never have I considered it as a job or anything else like that. So yeah, these that completely changed me, and I was sort of a libertarian, kind of bent, sort of retro Republican or libertarian, sort of playing or titillating with anarchy a little bit, but mostly just not really knowing what those terms even meant. Writing hardcore in that kind of realm, and then seeing through, in my mind, seeing through the truth of what government actually is, realizing that it's a blueprint for mind control, writing a book about this very thing, just really investigating how government is able to be so effective when it comes to managing our mental state.
Right.
Studying that led me to change from a I believe in the world to I don't believe in the world. I started to use my power to doubt everything, and I
Mhm.
doubted everything. I tore everything off the walls. I tore the drywall. I tore off out the insulation. I removed my house to its very studs, and some of those I took down. And I said, I'm going to rebuild my cosmology from a zetetic proof, meaning what can I directly touch? What can I limbically sense? This
Mhm.
is what's real to me.
Right.
It's led me into changing so much of my paradigms about science, about the world, about the cosmology, about, I would say, the shape of the world, but it's so much more deeper than that because I see it as more of a hallucinatorial state, like a constructive hallucination is how I phrase it. So it's led me to fall into what I majored in college, which is philosophy, and just fall in love with wisdom. This is why I call myself a sophist, a term that's supposed to be derogatory, is someone who is peddling wisdom on the street is a sophist. And that's what I do because I just find this stuff so fascinating. So
Yeah, I find
uh,
it fascinating too. I really love learning from you, and just like the way that you think so completely out of the box. Um, but I also almost think it could be dangerous. And I'm going to ask you, like, this has nothing to do with your history, but I was just curious, like, do you ever find yourself like wondering if your thoughts are dangerous?
I'm told that they're dangerous all the time.
Okay.
I'm threatened all the time because of it.
Oh, really?
I know that people find my thoughts really dangerous. But I also have a treasure chest. It's just right behind the camera, but a literal mini treasure chest that's full of thank you notes of people that have mailed me a card and just like with tears have told me that I've given them back their sanity. And
Yeah.
so the schizophrenia that I believe schizophrenia is a social disease, and when people are not able to have someone witness what they see in the world, they start to go crazy. The abhorrence starts to tear apart your mind a little bit. You feel isolated. That leads to atrophy. And
Hmm.
as your brain starts to atrophy, you still have these neurons that want to fire. You still have an appetite, but you can't.
Right.
So, as despite the fact that people are telling me what I do is dangerous, I so completely agree because this danger has led to all these people feeling less schizophrenic, less insane, more centered in their life, and most of all, free of millions and billions of calories. Free energy is what people thank me for the most. Is James, I can't believe how much energy you gave me.
Right.
Through changing my posture about this world, about what's happening, I simply have more calories to spend, and this makes me more generous, more clarity, more dangerous, much more dangerous too. And it's because of that, I do think that my ideas are very dangerous. I literally think that we should arm the populace with consciousness. And by doing that, that is truly the most dangerous thing that could happen in this world.
Right. Right. And so when you say schizophrenic is a social, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Social disease?
Social disease. That's
And
right.
so I think of it as more of a like demonic oppression disease, but I know that that is probably a function of the way everyone is treated and the way they're treated in their families and and so I think we might agree on it even though we might call it something different.
And I actually would call it that too, because the only way to, I think, cure your own schizophrenia, and all of us suffer from this, is to practice your own necromancy. That necromancy is just the word of seeing the dead things. And so the demonic nature of the voices it's actually, they're not voices yet. The demonic nature of the chemtrails of schizophrenia will morph into auditory hallucinations, they will morph into visual hallucinations, and more importantly, they will seep through the cracks of your cosmology, how you see the world, how you view the world. So you are haunted by the lack of witness. This is truly what I think demons are.
Right.
If you see something that no one else sees, you are going to have to create a demon that sees it because you see it. You cannot hide this from the place. When you find someone that sees what you can see, you are satisfied because there's less dissonance. Someone agrees with your world because right now we build our cosmology off group belief. We are socially asking each other, "Can you please shore up my reality for me?" Right? So
Right.
we enter into relationships with others through taxes, through paying to a state, through having a vernacular, through having a news index that tells us what is new in the world. These are all of us just channeling a centralized reality. And when all of us channel the same reality, it allows the weaker, I don't mean this in a
Yeah.
pathetic way, but a weaker imagination to build up enough strength to not go crazy.
Right.
So to me, the mainstream, what we call objective reality, is kind of like the salt lick or the trough or the watering supply that keeps the herd on a centralized reality. I mean this in an important, healthy, natural way, not
Yeah.
in a you're a sheep or I don't. It's just like Gaia, just like the nature herself would put a stream in the middle of a pasture, that we have those same kinds of streams. They may be crooked, they may be insane, they may be completely arbitrary, but we need these things to collectively drink. And
Right.
this is what keeps us together inside of a, a, a sane bubble, because really sanity is just a bubble that we've created in an insane natural
We
world.
all agree upon it.
Yeah, yeah. So once I look at it this way, you find a lot more calories because your cosmology has to be, or if you tune your cosmology to this, you no longer need an objective reality. You don't
Yeah.
need a straight trough that has exactly an XYZ. It's much more organic, and it changes with the nature of the herd. It changes with the nature of the collective mentality.
So interesting. Well, I do think it takes a certain level of maturity to listen to you because I think even just now when you were saying necromancy,
Yeah.
there are so many people that will run as soon as they hear that word. And if you really listen to the way that you said it, then there's a different meaning that you were giving to it than what like culture.
Yeah, it's too bad. That's probably my biggest flaw, is that I believe language is such an important tool that we use to uh, 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 exercise ourselves. I'll use that instead of necromance ourselves. To exercise ourselves,
Yeah.
we would need these holographic tools. This is ultimately why I think the word demon is quoted. It's like 48 times in the Bible, like that word. It's why if you truly just look up the definition of what Jesus was doing, and I won't say this word with it because I don't want people to run away. I really don't. Jesus was someone who saw your demons, and by seeing your demons, he was able to witness them away.
Wow.
The concept of the blind man is a little bit more practical. Jesus seeing the blind man near the well, I personally believe the interpretation there, in my mind, is a little bit more realistic. What I see is a person that knows if they lay right next to the well and tell everyone they're blind, they're going to be able to drink from sympathy, the
Right.
collective sympathy of everyone. Because here's a blind man that has made it so far. They've come so close to the well. Somehow they've been able to crawl their way all the way here, and they're only just a few feet away, just a few feet from what they need. Yet here they are declaring their need for such things. And I think Jesus is someone who had such a good posture that he's actually able to see the demon of deceit. He's able to actually, this is kind of a complex concept, because in early times, I want you to consider that when someone was drunk during a monthly Roman festival, they kind of turned insane, like seriously insane. They practiced debauchery, they practiced rape. It's literally what caused Christianity to come to birth, was all these crazy animistic pagan rituals that were happening. So people, I don't think were actually really able to see themselves, Carmen. It's like
Right.
they didn't really know what kind of state they were in. So if you found yourself saying that you were a blind man by the well, maybe only Jesus was able to see through that deceit. Maybe he was one of the few because he's able to penetrate the demon, right? Look underneath its veil and see that here's someone that can see, but they're learning the crutch of lying and deceit in order to prosper. So Jesus does the most beautiful, perfect thing. This is kind of, I'm sorry, but why I have to say he's a necromancer, because of this.
Right.
Jesus exorcised the
Exercise.
demon,
Yeah.
right? By spitting in his eye, right? Taking the mud, applying it to his eyes and cleaning it. And really what Jesus said is, I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing, and I'm giving you the chance to heal, right? I'm giving you a chance to have a miracle where now you've been healed and you can see. What do you want to do next, my friend? Do you want to say that you haven't been healed? Or do you want to see this new posture that I have too? And this is the necromancy. I said it again, sorry, but this is the
No, that's right.
exorcism, right?
Yeah.
That Jesus does to this figure, is because he literally says, you are not able to crouch in front of me. I'm not going to allow you to crouch that much. And
Right.
when you watch Jesus's every step through the New Testament, it is this exercising of posture. It is the finding of the soul, what I believe honestly is the ego inside man, and saying, I believe in you. I know that we don't like the ego now, but I think the ego has been really the thing that was able, it's the risen Christ inside of us. And it's part of why we reject this same spirit and we insist it's not who we are. It has to do with us not quite wanting to own that kind of responsibility. You see, we are still being exercised now. We are still learning to come into this new version of ourselves. And this is why we needed an archetype like Christ, who spent so much time simply looking at the placebo bubbles of all of us, because that's really all a lie is. It's just your placebo, your immune system creating a plasma lie around you, an electrical field, so that
Right.
you can survive, right? This is about survival. It's not about being evil. It's
Yeah.
about survival. The original definition of evil always meant feeble and weak. It didn't mean monstrously powerful, but still wants to destroy all. It didn't mean that.
Yeah.
So Jesus was fighting evil because he was exorcising the weak, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes, it does. And so, the reason I invited you here again, and thank you for coming back, was because I was watching a video that you had done that explained a lot about brain chemistry and dopamine. And I would love for you to share that. I think more people should know about it.
Yeah. So probably the main presentation that I cover this is called Pain is a Portal to God. And it really is just explaining how the body works on an economy basis. The body is an economy after all. It operates just as any economy would. There's going to be scarcity, there's going to be excess, there's going to be inflation, there's going to be deflation, there's going to be times where production is up, there's going to be times when the workforce is splintered and everyone's wearing a mask and at home trying to say that life's still together, right? So your body has to run all these things. And when we understand how the chemistry of the brain works, i.e., how you perceive consciously, at least how your egoic captain sees consciously, we'll be really specific, because not technically, your entire body is conscious. It's just that all of this gestalt is assimilated inside your captain's chair, we'll say, your ego, and you're able
Right.
to see all things. And when you start to look at how all things work, it's all running on a system of four basic forms of currency. And one of the main forms of this currency is dopamine. That dopamine is such an important form of currency that we quite frankly can't even see without it. That if we were to if you think of the archetype of three blind mice, all you have to do is think that they're sad, meaning that they have no dopamine. That even though the visual cortex is working, even though functionally all the cones and the rods inside the retinal walls of the mouse's eye are fully operational, that without the currency of dopamine, none of those processors, none of those chips are enabled, fired, or listened to at all.
Wow.
So dopamine really has more to do with our reality than even our senses themselves. That above our senses, before our senses can even be processed through the memory, they have to have a subway token. And this subway token they give as a valid form of currency in the thalamus that says, hey, would you like to see visually what's happening right now? And the thalamus looks at the token and says, you don't have enough dopamine. I'm not going to grant the privilege of consciousness to be able to even process you. In fact, if the system gets so saturated and depressed, it might secrete neuromelanin. It might actually secrete a black ink to cover up your ability to even deliver information to the thalamus.
It's
And this
redacting
is
it.
yes, exactly, Carmen. Yes, it's redacting it, and this is denialism. So neuromelanin is a form of liquid denial. This is a very special chemical that's actually not even secreted by mice. That neuromelanin, even though we're testing all our cosmetics on mice, even though we're testing all our medicine on mice, the mouse itself is actually at the threshold that doesn't even utilize denial, which means that all of our drug testing is being done on animals that don't even
Yes.
have the power to deny,
Yes.
which is why placebo is such a misunderstood technology right now.
Which is sad because it's very powerful. And I do think one of the things about like when people use also words like consciousness, it makes people run. But it shouldn't. When you think about every single atom transmits and receives,
Mhm.
isn't that a form of consciousness?
Yeah, I think so. And you could argue that the entire world is conscious, but it has different forms of qualia to it. So it has different resolution of consciousness to it, so to speak. Personally, I follow the work of like Michael Levin. It's not just him, but there's so many great thinkers out there. But the idea of cellular consciousness really hits all the right notes for me. The idea that every nucleus, every every eukaryotic cell in your body that has a nucleus in it really has the ability to have an identity. And it has an identity because it has a transcription. It has an RNA. It has a bit of code, and that code is repeated inside the cell over and over. It says, I am, I am, I am, I am, I am, I am. By the way, I am means ego. This is why I really think ego and consciousness are more related than we think. But that every cell is remembering itself. What you and I have as consciousness is actually just the Uber field of all of the cells remembering themselves. That the Uber field puts off a vibe, literally a vibe. And that vibe is what science would call agency, or a lot of neuroscientists would call agency. There's kind of a debate right now on whether or not agency is even real, but I swear it's a tangible analogy to look at what consciousness is, though, which is competing forms of agency. So your ass, the giant muscle, that connects your gluteus that allows you to kick, if it feels pulled, if it has a tension, that creates an agency that has a sort of criminal mafia. I really mean this. I'm not trying to be dramatic here. It really does employ a kind of criminal mafia in the body that has to manipulate all the other body parts to convince it that it should come to the front of the line and be heard.
Wow.
Yeah, it's insane. It is so insane. If you can share my screen, I'll show you
Okay.
this slide. There's a kind of body gambling that happens. Before I get there, let me just really quote the master here. This is Wolfram Schultz. He explains there are no specific receptors for rewards. The brain generates signals for something it makes up itself. The rewards do not exist. There's no pleasure chemical in the brain, is what Wolfram's saying. There's not a receptor there that if you hit this with electricity, you're going to feel good. It all works off pain. More importantly, it all works off the prediction of pain, because if you predict pain correctly, it actually feels like pleasure. It actually feels like pleasure. So nothing that is painful actually hurts, right? Because all these signals are frequency, not amplitude. Meaning if you hit your toe with a hammer and if you tickle it with a feather, both of those frequencies are going to be a 5 of 10. Meaning if you measure the milliamps of the signal, they're both a 5 of 10. So pain is not louder. We think that pain must be louder because it hurts so much more. But really, what pain is, what we feel is something hurting more, is simply a higher frequency. So instead of saying that hurt, it's saying that hurt, that hurt, that hurt, that hurt, that hurt, that hurt. And it's saying it so fast that we experience that as pain because of the mafia in our mind. Because pleasure itself is its own fiat currency. It's really is anticipation. And whichever body part predicts when the pain is going to come, the thalamus rewards next time because it says, hey, man, you're paying attention. It's looking for the best gambler all the time. And whichever system comes in and gambles its way the best is the one the thalamus trusts the most, which is why your gluteus maximus, when your ass cheek comes in and says, I have more pain than anyone could ever imagine. It's a giant gash in my southern quadrant and there's blood coming out. All these things, the body starts to realize, oh my God, he's right. Oh my God, he's right. Oh my God, he's right. There's all these signals that are matching what he's saying. Then the thalamus says, okay, I choose to believe you. But the
Wow.
moment the thalamus chooses to believe is the moment that everything else is rejected. And this is all about calories, but everything else that could be happening to you is rejected in that moment. This is really why we enter into shock. So ultimately, the money system, let me really show you the money shot here, because this is one big casino. It runs off dopamine, endorphins, oxytocin, and serotonin. But these four things are traded just like casino chips. They're traded on the black market. They can even be ghosted, that you yourself can create fake serotonin. You can create fake dopamine and put ghosts in your own machine. We call this pharmaceuticals. We built a whole industry around tapping into this. And we know this is true because there's a gambling that takes place, which is a kind of compression. This is really the money slide here. It's a kind of compression that happens through gambling. The body would not take signals nearly as serious if it wasn't able to gauge how much parts of the body are willing to gamble. So you have these signals where you have a fortune telling signal, where certain things are boosted simply because the agency is able to predict, hey, we're going to get a throb here in 3, 2, 1, throb, and boom. Now that person is a fortune teller. The thalamus says, you have the oracle, you have the vision. It gives it more dopamine. Then you have a coin toss. You literally have a neuron set, an algorithm that runs that just predicts. When is the signal coming? When is this signal coming? You have a novelty roulette, which is if you can predict a novelty better than anyone else, meaning if you can predict a different signal that no one was expecting and it's so out of the blue, but you were still somehow able to predict it, you would be rewarded more. And finally, you have this guess that hit, where literally you're betting, the body is gambling on how much the body is going to reward it based on whether or not it played these games correctly. So no one knows what the dealer's doing. The dealer doesn't know what the players are doing. All the clay chips are made from some underground lab that no one has access to, but also everyone can make their own chips if they can pull off enough science or if they can insert enough pills in their body. So all of these things lead to a body that's chaotic. It's not rational at all. I don't think that we would be able to survive if it was rational. I
I
think
was going
that
to ask you what you thought the benefit of the risk would be. Gosh,
it's
I
all
am
about
typing.
compression. It's all about saving energy. You can imagine how much work nature's had to do to just be as efficient as it possibly can, right? To spend as little calories as possible. And at the end of the barrel, when you look at what it takes, and it's funny because advertising works exactly the same way, Carmen, that if you can promise something, the lottery works the exact same way. For some reason, people are more inclined to buy a lottery ticket if it's 61 million instead of 53 million. Like in their mind, once it gets to 61 million, they're like, well, God, now I got to buy a ticket. I got to buy a ticket now. And this happens. This is just one of those four kinds of gambling I'm talking about, where the system itself, if you look at this like a government, the system itself is inserting propaganda into the network,
Wild.
and it's waiting for the propaganda to pull the biggest threat, i.e., the person that needs it the most. It's kind of a Pied Pipering system where you come in and you play the flute, and the people that are desperate enough for the gamble will show themselves. And the body has to do this because there are just trillions upon trillions upon trillions of transactions. And if you treated them all the same, I think the body would just simply clog from too much information. That it has to have this dire threat where agency is willing to kill itself. This is really the Zeus of who we are, is the electrical intent. This is such a tricky subject because we don't even understand that like water's fourth state is thinking. Like it's this kind of thing, that thought itself is a kind of state. And we only know this through Gestalt, through looking at the meta vibrations of how the brain works. This is a critical brain theory where the electrical responses are the storms on top of the neurons, and the storms on top of the neurons are the ones that give us a field of consciousness. So when you start to look at the body, I need you to understand that we are looking at a body through the most primitive kinds of eyeballs we've ever had, where we're just looking at the mechanical aspects of spin without actually looking at the thought, the intent that's placed into the vibration, because this is not science yet. It will be. But once people understand that intent can be invoked inside of water, for example, that now you have the ability to infect, to demonize, to possess, to cure, to exorcise, to necromance
Right.
everything. And this is the principle of baptism. This is the principle of washing your hands. This is the principle of having a cold, those cold bucket challenges where you feel that something different has happened. There's a real live spiritual effect of water. And it's very, I think, congruent to us understanding how our agency and consciousness works too.
So, of course, you know what MK Ultra is, right? Have you ever worked with somebody who has been and been able to deconstruct the programming?
Um, so I believe all of us have been MK Ultra'd to
At some level.
basically the same degree.
Oh, really?
And it's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot. I think you're looking at some people that have had a weaker defense to it, and because of
Um,
that, they generate more chemtrails in the field. I really can't say this enough. You and I are hallucinating reality to the best of our ability. There's nothing wrong with the skill. This is absolutely necessary for survival. You and I have been conditioned into insisting that our hallucination is real because we're drinking from the same collective stream. MK Ultra is a natural, important part of forging an objective reality where it should not be. So when we look at MK Ultra as being dangerous, it is. When we look at MK Ultra as being dishonest, it is. However, both of these things have created a sort of training wheels for consciousness, for people to grow, develop families, develop more of an immune system, develop their own cosmology. And until they're ready, until they're fully released, MK Ultra is going to be a very important salt lick that keeps people on track. It actually creates more stability. This is a horrible idea to think about, which is why I think people don't dig me as much, because I see it this way. So I know that feels bad, but I think it only feels bad because people aren't on board yet with the idea that not only are you hallucinating, but this is the most accurate version of reality that we've ever seen.
right.
And this is the truth. So all of the auditory hallucinations that we just call conspiracy theory are real, but they're hallucinated in our mind based on the amount of permeation that we give them to ourselves, the amount that they violate our own cosmology, I think is what's truly happening here. Anyone who feels that the government is out to get them, anyone who feels that there is MK Ultra controlling them, I think is on a hermetic spiritual journey out of the cave,
Right.
and that they're sensing these things because they're making it, because they're getting there. But there is a different threshold. And when you reach that different threshold, that different posture, a lot of those things fade away because you're
Mhm.
looking at a different signal. It's the same source, it's
They
the
just
same truth,
disappear.
but it's a different signal. Yes. And the signal makes more sense, which is why you don't see so many chemtrails in what you're rendering all the time.
So, do you believe that one of the greatest things that could happen for everyone would be for all of us to become more thick-skinned?
I think we probably began thick skinned and we're fighting the resistance to be more permeable. That we're constantly stabbing ourselves with metal objects, whether it be bullets, swords, syringes, daggers, arrows. We are making ourselves permeable. We are poking holes in ourselves. This causes more light, excuse me, this causes more light to get through. I think that all the torture that we feel, all the dissonance that we see in the world, it's just this spiritual, what it feels like to awaken. It's the middle of the day. You've been wearing something covering your eyes the entire time. You walk out of the theater and the sun just hits you, and it burns like a bitch. And the first thing you want to do is say someone's attacking me. The first thing you're going to want to think is this is bad. I can't survive this way, and you can't. All you have to do is adjust. And if you can hold the posture, you adjust and you start to see things. And this is just what we do with reality. If you imagine that source is always that brightness as soon as you open the door to the theater, it's always that bright all the time. It never changes. You and I have had to create shadows. We've had to create illusions so we can see, so we can move around this parking lot. This and so all these cosmologies that we have are vital and important. Every one of these things matters. There's really not one person that has a better take on things because they're showing you that if I hold my spine this way, if all 33 of my vertebrae are pushed or aligned in this XYZ, this is how I see the world. So every possibility, every facet of creation is technically visible at all times through everyone's spine. And that posture, I think, more renders what reality actually is versus what we think it is, which is the subjective thing.
But what like, wouldn't I guess it depends on the way you look at it, because wouldn't that be somebody that was more strong?
Um, so the number you are, I think you kind of shoot up and you have an immunity to certain kinds of information. So
Right?
this is before you know language, for example. You could call a baby a doo-doo head, and he's not gonna the words aren't gonna do anything. Your
Right.
intonation could attack him, right? He could sense some intonation things, but if you call him all the bad words if you call a baby a narcissist, the baby's gonna be like, there's nothing there to register. So there is strength in ignorance. There is strength in having this kind of immunity to things. And it seems like what happens is that all of the entire vertebrae is exposed to source information and different tones are played. And we either resist a tone or we dance with it. And so each of us are just different various curves of denial, I would say. And we learn to open up more, but we also learn to close up more. I don't think that we're all supposed to be completely open. We're all shells, you know. The shell has the sound of the ocean because it's curved, right? It reflects the sound and the natural opalescent colors of those things. And so our spines are the same way. We try and open, but then we notice the posture is too painful. So we start to lie to ourselves until we can hunch back down again. And then we try and open, and then we tell ourselves lies so we can hunch back down again. This is why we invented government.
So give a worldly example of that. Like somebody actually doing that in real life.
If you were in an abusive relationship, you might feel better. People might think that you're more enlightened in the world if you told yourself, I deserve it. I deserve this. And so you're living at home with your spouse and they're abusing you, but you're holding all of it together. You're great. You're showing it up all the extracurriculars. And then you start to grow. You go on a spiritual retreat. I don't know. You have a near death experience, probably is what happens. You almost got hit by a car and it changes you. It changes you and you go home and the first thing that happens is you deteriorate. It's true. First thing that happens is you say, "Hey, I'm not going to put up with that anymore." And then your spouse is like, "What the fuck? How dare you say that to me?"
You have to face the music.
And now you're living in the. This is why I think it's a hermetic experience, Carmen.
See, and I would look at that as strength. And so it's interesting how people use words different.
Well, maybe
She had
I'm
the
not sure
strength
how
to
we're
leave the
different on that.
abusive relationship. She had the strength to, speak up for herself. She had
Yeah, that's what I think too. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
develop more calories, and
Yeah.
when you have more calories, you don't always act stronger, but when you have more calories, you can start to spend more. And what you spend them on is going to be dependent on where you need to go. Not everybody wants to go up. There's this idea we have that everyone wants to be a higher version of
It's a
themselves. This
really
is
good
not
point.
true. This is
That's
not
a
true.
really good point.
And this is what I mean by if we finish this analogy, she's going to, let's say she has near death experience, she has more calories. She comes home, she tells her spouse, I'm not going to put up with this anymore. And then he fucking nails her. Now it looks like she's lost. It looks like she's maybe crouching more. And she is crouching more because she tried to spend these extra calories and it didn't work out. Why did it not work out? Probably because she didn't have enough. She didn't have enough self-worth to say, not only am I going to let you destroy that, I will watch my entire world end to have something different. This is the near death experience. I'm changing the medicine so much that I'm destroying everything that I have. So this is spending a lot of calories, but if you look at it from the outside, it looks self-destructive. It would be called self-destructive. In fact, everyone would be accusing you of violating the rules because you're the one that changed. Your spouse didn't change. You're the one that changed. This is why it's so hard to have a spiritual experience, because truly the first thing you do is violate the tenets with everyone else that you call friend. They're expecting you to hold it together. They're expecting you to maintain the same altitude as you did before. So how you spend your calories is going to be very expensive. Not everybody can afford to invest in themselves, which is why some people choose to divest in themselves, because it's a strategic movement of finances. It's a way of positioning yourself. If I move into the trailer park spiritually, I will save calories because I won't have to pay for lawn care. I will lose calories because I have thin walls now, right? So everything's a trade-off.
Yeah.
But ultimately, this comes down, I think, to how much energy you have at your disposal.
Right.
And ultimately, that determines, I think, how much you're able to spend on yourself.
But that would be a good kind of danger. Ultimately, in my opinion, because to stay where she was, like if you were the one advising her and people would say James is dangerous, he's giving her advice to have a near death experience, but really she's far better off leaving that relationship and going through whatever death she has to go through.
Yeah, and you really, because of the symbiotic nature of way people are, I just did a stream on this where I said, if you're gonna believe in someone, only believe in them 1 to 4%.
Yeah.
Because if you believe in them more, they're gonna say you're gaslighting them.
Right.
And energy works the same. So people are going to want to have more calories, and then they're still going to want to fail. They could want to fail for a lot of reasons that you don't even know. And they're not going to want to admit that they sabotage themselves. That's completely out of the question. So they need a scapegoat to blame that on. So we hire a trainer, we hire a therapist, we hire a husband, we hire a wife, we hire a job. We enter into a prana economy with someone else, and then we get to blame them later. We get to say they're the ones that gaslit me. They said I should open my own business, and then a month later he left me. Like this is
Yeah,
what
that
it would look like,
4%
right?
is a very good number.
Yeah. So it's like you really have to have to know how to gaslight someone, because you really have to understand where they want to go. This is why I think it's better just to not do that. It's more about, I respect someone's ability to make horrible decisions
Yeah.
because I believe in their autonomy and in their spiritual resilience. And if it kills them, I believed wrong, but I still gave them autonomy,
Right.
and I want autonomy. I
That's
don't,
why I stopped believing in charity.
yes, see, you're getting there, because not your, I don't mean it that way, but this is what I mean by, it looks like you're cruel. It looks like you're stingy, but actually, no, you've built for the very first time a chronic barrier. You said, look,
Right.
I'm only giving my potlatch to people that I feel truly deserve it. It's not going to be egged out of me or inked out of me or secreted out of me through some, other costume it's in. Yeah, this is what I mean by, growth doesn't look like growth if when you're in a world that doesn't want growth, right? It's going to
Yes.
look exactly the opposite.
Well, and that's why I was saying it takes a maturity to listen to you because, well, one, you're so creative, and you give such great parables, but I do think they can be interpreted a million different ways. And if somebody hasn't listened to you long enough to understand the words that you're using, like calories or torque or, whatever it
Yeah.
is, it's like it takes a little bit to adjust to. um, when I was working with guys out of jail, I had that savior complex,
Mm,
and it was me doing all the work for them. And it became
yeah.
so heavy. And then I'd be so frustrated with them. And what I ultimately learned, and we all learned together, was that one of the worst things you can do to another human being is to have pity for
Mm,
them. And to think they can't do something themselves. And so that was a big turn for me. And I'm always recommending to people that they should, maybe help people get tools or learn or whatever, rather than giving people charity, because it seems to backfire.
yeah. If you think about, if you want to go give a homeless person a house, you're really just setting them up for failure. There's the reason why they're homeless is because they're living a prokaryotic life. You're a eukaryotic cell. You've got a nucleus that has its own shelter. It's got its own front yard, and that's just one way of living. There's over half the world doesn't even live that way. They live in a different kind of lifestyle. The entire world is its cytoplasm, is what it is. It's not just your yard. It's not just your car. So when we insist, really what charity really is we're just asking people to shore up our reality for us. And so we want them to live like we do. So we'll feel better about that. And that's really at the heart of what a lot of politics are.
Oh
But a
yeah.
lot of politics, really, keep in mind, they are trying to build a centralized reality that everyone can agree to. So even having a public charity, a notion of a public charity, is kind of a starter pack for empathy. And so if you look at government as simply the starter pack, it's a starter pack for your immune system. It's a starter pack for your wisdom, for through education. It's a starter pack for charity. It's a starter pack for self-defense. All of these are starter packs. These are not, you don't want to use these on the street, but this is how you would learn your colors. This is how you would teeth. This is how you would learn to walk. And that's why I think sometimes, really unpopular thing to say here, but I think sometimes we're really a little bit too harsh on how much we hate the government, what it does, because we don't really understand that it truly is trying to appeal to the least common denominator, because that's the only way to hold an objective reality together. I think if government could have a conversation with each of us, Carmen, I really mean this, I think it would say these words: if you can take care of yourself, I'm not going to fuck with you.
Yeah.
I really think that it does say that. I understand how terrifying it was during 2019. I was there in the foxhole too. I'm not saying that we are completely safe, but I'm
Right.
telling you, when you were out on the Serengeti and COVID was the Serengeti, the people that got taken out were the ones that weren't paying attention. Those are the ones that the government thinks need to go. It's not the ones that are the sharpest. It's not the ones that are taking care of themselves. It never has been. It never will be. These are expensive kills. That's not what a nature wants to do. It wants a preservation. It wants something that works. If you look back in history, every single government, no matter how horrible it was, no matter how horrible it will be, no matter how horrible it is, the ones that work have one single thing in common, and it's called upward mobility. You're not going to be able to find a government that doesn't offer that kind of escalator. And I think if you notice that ultimately that's what's happening organically outside of the conscious thoughts of the Democrats or the Republicans, they have nothing to do with it. But if you just look at the system itself, it does create an upwardly mobile system. This goes all the way back to Rome. And when a government fails, it fails because it stops doing that. The country is not able to survive because the country has to be upwardly mobile in order for it to survive. That's what I think we're looking at right now. The future looks dystopian because of the difference between the bottom and the top. The more the top gets up, the more dystopian the future would have to look because you're constantly comparing, wow, look how far the bottom is. Oh my fuck, look how high the top is. And that's really what the definition of dystopian is. It's stretching our drum of consciousness. It's making us gawk more than we ever have. It's making us exasperated more than we ever have because the wave, the sine wave, is so much bigger and lower. It has such a deeper dip to it.
That's crazy. And so, when you think of dopamine, or like, let's just make it life applicable again as far as dopamine goes.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Right.
and also, don't forget, I would love for you to share the retina piece of dopamine and the mouse eye, because I just think that was fascinating.
Yeah.
But like, let's say somebody's watching this and then they go, wow, this is so interesting. What are some ways that they could maybe observe themselves so that they could start seeing it, and kind of include that risk piece too, because I think that's fascinating. It's like
So,
this gamble slash.
yeah. So ultimately, although most of us want to be safe, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Uh, uh, Another desire has taken the front, and it is to have a conscious experience. Most of us want to feel, we'll call this feel alive.
Yes.
They want to taste a day that has a lot of flavor. And we're going to do this. It doesn't matter where we are. We can be on any part of the economic scale. If we have a conscious appetite for the experience, we're going to pull off our clothes in the middle of the MARTA and just start stripping through downtown if we have to. If that's what it takes for us to have the conscious experience, we're going to do that. We'll become criminals. We'll become drug addicts. We'll steal paper clips at work. We will do something so mundane, but so petty and so evil and devilish simply because it will give us a conscious kick, and we can torture ourselves for the rest of the day. This is part of the appetite, Carmen. This is so
Right.
important. This is part of the appetite. This is why people, I think, are so confused about why things aren't getting better.
Right.
Ultimately things are getting better, but it's so hard to see because we do not factor in what is the conscious appetite that's here. Ultimately, our appetite is what's going to light this whole place up. Right now, most people are like, if we could kill people's appetites, we'd be okay. This is what most society thinks. This
That's
is what
kind of true.
society thinks, right? Is if we can kill this appetite, everyone will behave. We will teach them mundanity until it hurts. And it did the opposite. It did the opposite. It made people like me in standard school go nuts because I was dying of starvation. That's what was happening. I was asphyxiating in math class. Not because math wasn't interesting, but because it was being taught to me through regurgitation.
Right.
Right. And it's just me. That's just my appetite. All of us have different appetites, but we're going to find a way to get them. So we're going to get in trouble. We're going to become the star. We're going to play sports. All these different things allow us to compete with what we do. So ultimately, the conscious appetite's growing. Ultimately, our jobs, everything that we do, is going to be a factor in how much conscious appetite we have. The real world practical example, I think, really boils down to what is your appetite and do you deserve more? If you feel that you deserve more, you're going to misbehave. Congratulations. You deserve more. You have more entitlement. The mundane world is not going to cut it. You're not going to be able to hold a job at Blockbuster Video. Sorry, I just dated myself. You're not going to be able to hold a really boring job. You're not going to be able to do something mundane. You're going to need something more exciting because, quite frankly, you'll die without it. The minutes will creep by. It will kill you. It will drain you like a dry sponge. And you will be surrounded by other dry sponges that look at you and wonder, why are you bitchy all the time? This is what it does.
I'm
So
gonna start calling people dry sponges.
yeah, this is really at the ultimate part of this. If you can stay in a place where you can gather more calories, the very first thing it's going to do is you're going to feel painful
Mhm.
because you're going to think you deserve something more. You're going to think you deserve more because you have enough calories to feel you deserve something more. I want you to keep that. This is your only flame. The fact that you feel entitled to more is the only way you're going to get out of the cave. It's the only way. And everyone's going to call you selfish. They're going to tell you to drop the ego. They're going to tell you to eliminate all these things. They're going to tell you, more importantly, the blueprint of mind controls. They're going to convince you of step one, which is that you are broken. They're going to say you're broken. You're going to feel that they're right because you are miserable. And you're comparing yourself to other dry sponges and you're like, this sucks. I am not having a good time. And this is your opportunity to fall into the mind control and feel better because you will convince yourself I'm broken. And once you convince yourself you're broken, that's the first step of mind control. Step two comes in, which is we can fix it, you being broken, but you're not going to be able to fix it yourself. You're going to need to find someone outside of you who will fix you for you. And this is really where the hooks of mind control really sink in. If you are entitled to more, and if the system catches you trying to get more, and the system tells you that you are broken, and you believe them, it is fucking over. Goodbye. See you later. Maybe in 3 eons, maybe in a few generations, your great grandkids will wake up and try again. Nothing wrong with this life. This is a life that's important. Your epigenetical vine needs just a few more generations to really get that spunk, right? To really
Yeah.
build its momentum up. So this is not a contest. I swear it's not.
Right.
In fact, it could be that the worst thing you could do is pop up too soon, right? That you could pop up in what you think is spring, but it's not. And here comes a cold snap. So there's no winning by coming first here. But if you can traverse through these 3 steps of mind control, if you can still maintain your appetite after all that suffering, you will find that the appetite satisfies itself simply because your aperture opens. There's a conscious lens inside of you, and that lens dilates, it opens wider.
Mm-hmm.
And when it opens wider, you see colors that you've never seen before. I'm really not being superfluous here. The colors have a smell to them. There's a richness in the air. You can taste electricity on your tongue. Never been able to do that before. The voices in your head are wise as fuck. They're telling you things that are about to happen. This isn't a place where you want to get rid of the voices. This isn't a place where you want to meditate and remain perfectly still. This is a place where you want to dance, you want to play, you want to be in the zone of it all. Why? Because you have an abundance of calories. You've collected so many calories in your posture that your entitlement is through the roof that you literally change reality. You morph and move your needle on the record to accept more. And you're in the same room, Carmen. You're in the DMV. You and someone else are in the exact same line at the DMV, and you are having a rich experience, and they are not. Both of you are in the same place.
Yeah.
Both of you are in the same quote, quote, reality, but one of you is having a good time. This is what I mean by you develop your own cosmology, you
Hmm.
develop your own immune system, the placebo through the use of dopamine, by the way, your frontal lobe is given enough dopamine that it's able to broadcast a picture that goes into the retina and starts to visually help you hallucinate a brighter day. You connect with the lady behind the DMV because she's a Virgo and oh my God, her moon's in Capricorn. Whatever it is, you are going to find that connection because your appetite insists that it must be fed. It's
Yeah.
all about that. It's all about that entitlement we feel.
Yeah. So aperture opens. It can't close, can it?
It can, but you're going to, it'll be something you won't notice
Okay.
because your calories will go away and the colors will just simply stop being there. You'll insist that it's just a shitty day. You'll insist the entire time, oh, it's just the day's shitty. And it's not. You lost calories. Do you know why? Probably because of a demon, a self talk. A lot of times, you're having a loss, a fear, or an angst. There's a decision that you could make that you haven't. This is just one example. And since you haven't, you have an algorithm of haunting, and you hear this in your head. The haunting voices come up and remind you, I can't believe you said that yesterday. Can't believe you said that. You said pineapple, not pine cone. This is my latest one. In a video, I said pineapple instead of pine cone. I did it twice. And I'm laughing at myself because I can do this now. But if I would have had this thought years ago, I
Yeah.
would have been like, I can't believe how stupid I am. I'm stupid. How dare I think that I can be on line talk? I mean, that's what it would look like. It's the exact same reality, Carmen. It's the exact same reality. The only thing different is I have more dopamine, which means even when I'm rendering the fact that I said pineapple instead of pine cone, it's still in more of a loving kind of kicking myself.
Right.
It's because I can afford that. I
And
can
that's more of
afford
what
the
I
moment.
meant as far as aperture. I meant like the capacity, once it grows, I don't feel like it can go back down.
Yeah, and you're right. I didn't mean to disagree. It's just
No, no, no.
when we have
I was
trauma, when
I
we have
wanted to
trauma,
know.
yeah.
So
If you
it's
go through in some serious trauma, you could sphincter up, like,
yeah,
really squeeze those muscles, the diaphragm of your aperture,
sure.
and you could squeeze those and you could enter into a state of shock,
Right.
right? But yes, you're right. Once your aperture is opened in a certain degree, you're kind of screwed. Like you are. Now you have to have organic tea. Not, everywhere you go, you got to have organic tea. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And your car has to have a sunroof. Look, life's short, and I have to have a sunroof because at night I open the sunroof and I feel free. And if I have a car that doesn't have a sunroof at night, then it's crushing me emotionally. It's things like this.
Yeah.
Like it's not trivial. We're always exercising our entitlement up or down. This is crucial, up or down, because sometimes we notice I don't want to live in this rich neighborhood. It's too snooty for me. Meaning, this posture is too. I can't afford this posture. I'm always having to look out for my own language. I want to be
Or I
more
don't want
sarcastic.
to, or
Yeah,
yeah.
or I want to think shittier of myself because I want to do more things that are wrong. I want to eat horrible things in my
Right.
diet, but I can't because this specter of, oh, I'm so responsible is always walking around, and I'm sick of it. So I will sabotage myself and try
Yes.
and go back to that smaller aperture
That's a
just to take
good
lifetime.
example. That's a great example.
Yeah, you could have 2 generations of you trying to tank yourself and you not even know it, that your entire life is you're just trying to tank yourself because you were too high. You were too high 2 lifetimes ago, terrified you, right? So not everybody's meant to go up, not everybody's meant to go down.
And up is sometimes not as fulfilling as you imagined.
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah. And
Well,
so when they call dopamine the molecule of more,
mhm.
I shouldn't say they, it's one book, but I'm assuming there's been some sign off on that. Um, that's what you're talking about as far as like getting to a certain point. Like it keeps
It's so it's so freaking complex that we have to try and simplify it as much as we can.
yeah,
We try and call dopamine sort of the pleasure chemical is what we used to say, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a little bit more accurate to call it the currency chemical
Right.
because it's the thing that just allows everything to work. And really, you could call it almost like a resolution lotion. The more dopamine you have, the higher resolution of a reality you're going to be able to render. The less dopamine you have, the more black and white the world is. Like in reference to our retina, you have maybe 4% of the blue cones in your eye in relation to how much blue we see.
Wow.
I'm trying to say that blue is amplified like 25 times in our hallucinatorial mind before it's broadcasted on the screen. The sky is actually not that blue. It's not. We paint it bluer because we have dopamine. We under the retinas are going to be their largest
So cool.
supply of dopamine. Out of everything in your body, the retinas are going to generate the most dopamine, which means the thoughts you have are secreting this, if you want to call it a happiness chemical, if you want to call it a currency chemical, if you want to call it a resolution chemical. If you have good thoughts, you have more to spend on your reality. I swear that's true.
Mm-hmm.
So the better thoughts you have, the richer reality you have to paint with it. This is really what a sad life is. It's a sad life that's meager in calories. So the blues are gray.
So more dopamine equals more calories.
Yes. More
Okay.
resolution, more
So
calories. Yes.
then somebody who's depressed just needs what? More novelty, more, well, actually any of those 4 things
Yeah.
that you showed.
Yeah. So someone who's sad, I know you get the difference, Carmen, but just in case people are hearing, it's not someone who's sad, it's someone who's depressed. Someone
Depressed.
who's sad actually has a lot of dopamine. They've got a ton. Because if you feel intense sadness, it's the same amount of dopamine as if you feel intense euphoria. So both of these are amperages of dopamine. What you're talking about is depression, which means I lack the ability or desire to feel.
Right.
I don't have the oomph, and you don't have the oomph because everything's gray because you can't afford anything brighter than that. And because you can't afford anything more than that, you actually lament what it's like to know how colorful things used to be. And this is a pretty dismal place. It's a lack of dopamine that's causing that. I just want people to understand that depression isn't really the same at all to sadness, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's more of this dry sponge kind of effect.
So if you were giving advice to someone who was depressed, what would you suggest?
Um, typically, depression is going to be based on an immune response to something. So there's probably a reason why they need to see things gray, that the grayness there is an important part. They've had to cannibalize their own paintings. Quite frankly, probably because the colors themselves are too fearful. I think if they're suffering from this, it's probably just a lot of necromancy that's needed. You would just need to find the demons that are stopping you from collecting more electricity. Ultimately, depression wants to, and will always quote quote fix itself just because you have more casino chips to spend. It's really just, the depression is really just noticing that your retinas are dismal.
Yeah.
And so to me, depression, noticing you're depressed, is, I think, most of the battle. And if you can tap into this idea of why would I not be entitled to more color in my life, I think you can start to see your way around this. And ultimately, depression is gonna be some sort of near death experience that either put them into that space or it's going to get them out of that space. I'm using near death experience in a really broad term here. You
Thank
could
you.
lose your job, right? Or divorce,
Yeah.
right? All these are near death experiences. So
They are.
yeah, and a lot of, I think, depression is people that don't feel entitled to feel better. They just, they don't feel that they deserve that. It's
That's a good one.
so deep, you know. This is why it's important to watch our collectors. Energy calories is not a scarce resource. You're collecting calories all the time. If we truly understood that all we do all day is shed calories, that's all we do. We wake up and we're like, how can I get rid of this energy? It doesn't feel that way, but it's true. This is ultimately how it happens, that the more calories we have, the more attractive we become and the more people eat us. So a lot of times the energy thing games that we're doing is actually purely for our protection. We actually want to glow less because people will eat us more when we do. If you don't believe me, look at how we treat stars,
I was just gonna
look at how
say
we treat pop stars, success, people that are successful, the quote, quote, prettiest person in the room, right?
models. Yep.
We tear them down. We're like, look at her. Look at, you know, it's all these things are real life chronic events. And if we really tap into that, we understand this is what I mean by the blueprint of mind control. Because if you understand that your posture is to protect you, you no longer feel like a victim.
Right.
You start to
Which is
understand, oh, this is
really
a
good, which
strategy.
is really good. That's profound right there. Say
Yeah.
that again.
It's a strategy, right? And once you tap into the fact that you think lower of yourself as a survival strategy, you're no longer a victim to that. It becomes a power. And it's not something you should be ashamed of. You should really, I think you should marvel at how creative you are. That you're able to create the mental
That's
ability to
funny.
call yourself a victim to because now you're secreting sorry. You're giving yourself sympathy when you don't think you should have it. So we create these roles in our mind to create a pranic vortex so we can either collect more electricity or most of the time drain even more electricity. So we debase ourselves. We show loyalty to someone that doesn't deserve it. We sarcastically say one thing and mean another. All of these would be techniques, in my opinion, that would lower the amount of collective calories we have and shed them instantly.
So there's a direct correlation between dopamine and energy.
Yeah, I think so. You could think of it
That's
as
so interesting because I've always been super hyper most of my life.
mm,
Um, and so that just means I just would wake up with lots of calories.
yeah, in fact, the hyperness itself would be a form of shedding that
Okay.
that you would only feel hyper
I
because you
gotta be, I
have
gotta get
yeah, because you have energy and you wanna get rid of it.
right.
We had this discussion the other day, but a baby crying is actually a baby trying to lose energy. They're like,
Right.
"I have too much energy. I need to let go of this. I can't handle this much amperage." It's a voltage, you know? It's a psychic voltage. This is why our immune system really is a field. It's a field, a fielding. I don't think that our I don't think our emotional body has really come online yet, Carmen. So my parents' parents, even my generation, don't really know what feelings are.
It's
They're
crazy. My ex's dad had never had somebody besides me say I love you to him.
yeah, yeah,
Crazy.
yeah. See, if you think about this like an electrical field that has a switch, and that switch only comes on when there's enough abundance of calories, that the human psyche has only recently come online. And because it's just come online, it's starting to notice things like, "Hey, I was touched inappropriately." Like this is a feeling. This is a
Right,
feeling that you had to have to know that there's a
right,
part of me that's inappropriate to touch.
right.
So, we're looking at a primordial caveman coming out of this dark, black, abysmal cave into the light for the very first time. Ultimately, I think that we'll understand that our feelings are our intuitive sonar. It's an immune bubble, a plasma that we put out that tells us things about who enters our bubble, about what we think about, our thought process. The field changes when someone comes in and either attacks our bubble or tries to reinforce our bubble, however we want to frame it. Eventually, these emotions and fields won't be looked at as something we need to chemically remove from our system through pharmaceuticals. We'll start to really, really tap into the conscious information
Regulating,
that they're giving us. Yeah, for sure.
self-regulating. I
Yeah,
don't know. It's so it this all fascinates me, and thank you so much. I still would love for you to share the piece about how the light affects the retina, um, and how that like all of the screens and the different things that we have in our eyes. I'm thinking it was you. Wasn't that in your? Maybe it was somebody else that I was watching. But I remember learning about how, and I thought it was you with the mouse. Like there's this channel that goes back, and it has to do with, oh, I'm trying to remember what it was. Darn it, I don't remember, but it had something to do with why doom scrolling continues to happen, but I might have heard it somewhere else. So
Hmm.
sorry about that.
That's okay. I don't know if that's me. I can tell you though that even doom scrolling is really just fulfilling an appetite. And I think that we only want to approve of emotions that are above zero. So what we call positive. But I use this term orca consciousness. I think it's really important. An orca consciousness is the idea that when we watch orca right now, some of us might call them cruel. We might say their behavior is cruel and inhumane. But an orca has like 13 octaves of understanding where we have 5. And because of that, things that are going to be immersive for them are going to seem outlandish to us. Like completely off the kilter. This is way too much feeling. And so I think that ultimately we are competing with each other, arguing over what the best size our aperture should be. And when you look at the invention of the blues, for the very first time, people were starting to appreciate what it was like to be sad. And so I think doom scrolling is really just exercising that same thing, Carmen. It's just the ability to have savory and sweet, to have salty and sugary. All of these things are important parts of the edges of our sine wave. And we're quick to judge the ones that we deem below bar or negative polarity. But if truly we embrace these two, I think we'd find more invigoration because it's ultimately the undulation between these, which is what we call bipolar right now. But I would say that a bipolar person is someone that's tapped into orca consciousness. They simply just have
So
a wider aperture.
when you say 13 opposed to 5, that means that they know this. Or are you giving an example?
So Mariah Carey can sing like 5 octaves with her voice.
Right.
And you and I could probably sing 2, 3. Like it's we can't do as
0
many.
for me, but yeah.
So orca can do 13. And that's just it when it comes to sonic listening. Their ability, they can hear sounds and distinguish up to 13
Okay, that's what
octaves.
I was wondering, if it was
Yeah.
related to a sense or
Yeah. So if you think about it that way, you and I have 16-bit minds, or what, maybe this is a better analogy. You and I have 4K screen, but an orca has a 16K screen. So they're going to be able to see colors that you and I just don't know are there. And because we don't know they're there, what would be high definition for them would probably be uncertainable to us. It would be too much information. We wouldn't be able to absorb it. We might call it cruel. We might call it inhumane. We may not even notice that it has the same tenderness times 16 as you and I do, but we're not able to see that field because we only see one color between red and yellow, and it's orange. We don't see marmalade. We don't see fuchsia. We don't see rouge. We don't see puce. All those colors, and peach, all those colors, pink, all those colors are lost to us because we're living in that 2-bit or 4-bit mind. And if you look at the standard person in the world today, what you might call a sheep, you're really just looking at a young budding consciousness who's just like you, who came from the same place you did, but they're in a 4-bit screen. You're in a 16-bit screen now. You can see deep state. You can see pedophilia. You can see the evils of the agenda. They can't. They're in a 2-bit state. There's going to be a black hat and a white hat. It's going to be that simple. And it's nothing wrong with that. We don't get to say they're wrong. We
right.
can, but all we're doing is losing calories. If you can live in a world where you understand that the 2-bit mind is just as crucial as your 16-bit mind, but more importantly, that there's probably a 32-bit mind that you can't understand either, you're going to save all your calories. You're going to have a really good time because you're not going to be insisting that you're the only one that's right and that you're the only one that sees it correctly.
And how do they live together? I mean, not just on the same earth, but let's make it a really small example, like the same house.
Yeah.
Let's say you're growing up in a family and and this is my last question. I won't keep you any longer. But let's say you're growing up in a family and you're kind of the 16 bit, and a few people that are leading the family are maybe at 8 or 4. Um, how do they live with them?
Typically, they cannibalize them until they can get out. And so I was cannibalized by my not just my family, but just everyone around me. Just constantly cannibalized me. Hey man, I need you to stay in 4K mode or 8K, whatever. Ultimately, this is what we do to everybody. But it happens in the workplace. It happens in the social structure. If you go into a line at a barbershop, you're going to, believe it or not, you're going to start regulating. You're not going to know it, but you're going to regulate. One of you is going to be the outcast. It's true. If you go in a jury, you may not be the outcast. You could be the foreman. You could be the one that everyone else decides has their shit together. All this is going to depend on the chemistry of the room that you're in, right?
Right.
That's really what determines it. And families will be the same way. So ultimately, if we are growing, if we're living in an upward mobile society, which I think we are, one of the primary symptoms of that, Carmen, one of the absolute primary proofs I would have is that kids would be complaining about what we're talking about right now. That if it was truly upwardly mobile, then you'd have a generation that has a higher resolution complaining because the resolution that raised them is too lame. This is proof that it's upwardly mobile. This is
Right.
proof that we're growing.
Yeah.
So in my mind, the shame that I feel for my parents, and I love my parents,
Right.
but the shame I feel for my parents is the distance I have gained from where they currently were.
Right.
It's a sign of progress to have shame. And it takes calories for me to see this. It takes calories for me to look through the angst, to look through all the labels of my parents abused me or whatever else I want to frame. For me to see it this way takes calories. And when I do, I save all this energy. There's no enemy. There's no blueprint of mind control. I'm simply in flow state, and so are they.
Right, but it's just at a different pace.
Yeah.
Let's say you're in love and you're at both at 8, and one of you kind of pops up to, to 12 or 16. Um, I guess sometimes it ends in divorce, sometimes you hold space for the person.
Yeah,
And
or it is possible that if both of you are satisfying an appetite, I think this happens most when there's an adult and a child can both be in a zone, even though they're on two different wavelengths.
true, true.
Yeah. So it is possible, but it does come from your cosmology doesn't threaten me and my cosmology doesn't threaten you. It's when we feel the threat from another's cosmology that the 8K and 4K people can't hang out in the same room. If you have a more schizophrenic, honestly, if you have a more schizophrenic cosmology, everybody gets to be Jesus. Everybody gets to be the Pope. There's not a centralized reality to conform to. You know who has this? Children.
Right. Oh yeah.
Children have this. That's why it's so much easier, I think, for you to have a relationship with a child when you're 8K and they're 4K. Both of you are still sustained because one of you doesn't give a shit about what your cosmology is, and that's the kid. And because of that, there's congruence there. So I do think that this is possible, but because of objectivity, because of this, which honestly it's important, but because of this important trough that most of society needs, it makes it more costly for a 4K and an 8K person to be in the same room because each of them are insisting that their bubble has to be real. And those two are just going to simply compete.
Right, which happens in politics and such.
Oh, yeah.
But really, so, like you think, oh, like if you wanted to, give people a leg up or help somebody, really the greatest thing you could do to help somebody is to just stay in your own world.
Yeah. Yeah. If you have
Share like we are.
yeah. And most of it's wordless. People are going to sense your posture and everyone's going to regulate. And typically there's a leader and typically there's a submissive. And submissives, I hate that word because it sounds negative, but there's a follower, but even that sounds negative. Technically, you're going to find the leader in the room and you're going to give them props. You're going to say, hey, I love how high your posture is. And everyone's
Right.
going to ask, can I hold this too? And they're going to try and come up to the leader. Typically, what happens is they can't make it. And the leader ultimately brings his posture down a little bit, and everyone has congruence. So
Right.
a leader comes in, the effective leader has to come in with 1 to 4%. I'm making this number up, but with 1 to 4% better posture than the room. If he comes in with 6%, he's going to gaslight the whole place. People are never going to be able to do that. But if he's got like a 1 to 4% increase, they're going to smell it. They're going to think, hey, I can keep up with
I
this guy.
can do this.
Yeah. And then he's able to leave the room without anyone noticing. So ultimately, this is how I think it works. But then also the people will they will defeat their leader if the leader is taking them too high, and they just don't want to go. They'll cannibalize the group, and you see this in groups all the time, organizations, companies, families. If it's decided that the family is reaching too high, that the patriarch is aiming too high, that means the patriarch has lost sight of where everyone truly is at. The group is forced to cannibalize itself until it lowers its altitude and finds a
Oh,
safer place
it's
to
all
exist.
so fascinating,
Yeah.
like, honestly. But I do think this would help people a lot because I think it would help people relax on pushing other
Yeah.
people to fit their narrative or the things that they want. And I also think it would help people relax and go, I don't know why I'm pushing so hard on this because
Yeah.
really at the end of the day, if we would just all slowly awaken, that would be the best thing. But
Yeah. Ultimately, people push so hard because if their reality is not met with stone cold assurance, they feel weak. If you can embrace the fact that I'm saying that you are accurately hallucinating this world, if you can say that to yourself over and over, if you can say, I'm actively hallucinating, and it not make you mad, I think you're ready for this kind of thing. But
yeah.
until you are, I completely understand how rigid and hard headed you're going to have to be to insist that everyone around you shores up and fortifies your reality. This is what it's like to learn how to ride a bike. It's going to take practice until you're there.
Yeah. I always call it my magic carpet. I'm just gonna, because like you can just kind of like have your own space. It's kind of like
Mhm.
Montessori, like the whole Montessori concept
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
that each kid gets their own rug, and
Mhm.
but it has this way of going 360 and up and down, and really you really are capable of flying just above the fray
Yeah.
and not getting involved in it. But I think because we want to help others, or we want to ease their pain or whatever. But I do think it would be better if everyone just worked on themselves.
Mhm.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming, and I absolutely have enjoyed watching I've watched so many of your videos. They're just phenomenal.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
very good. So tell people where they can find you. I also have it in the description box, so you don't have to pay attention too hard.
Yeah, just Google James True. You should be able to find me there. I keep a column and Substack. I have a channel on YouTube and things like that. And if you're curious about this, if I'd say that if you think about doubt, your ability to doubt the world as an electrical field, then the more doubt that you have, the more you're noticing that you're spending calories on building your own reality. Ultimately, I think this is really what kicks you off, and you can form your own cosmology, and everything just kind of fixes itself from that point on. It's a very self-correcting kind of posture to have. And it really starts with doubt. Can you afford to constantly doubt things? If that can become your new state, that's first gear. And you'll notice that once you get first gear moving, second gear is easier, third gear is even easier, and pretty soon you're just cooking. So I don't
Right.
even know if you need me. I mean, definitely read my books, definitely read Blueprints of Mind Control, definitely subscribe to my channel. But ultimately, this comes down to you and your relationship with your feelings or your feelings, and how that relates to your posture and how you see the world.
Oh, also, as someone who is new to you, I was very confused by the airship thing, so I've watched a few of those now.
Mhm,
So, James has a second channel called Dojo Earth.
mhm.
Could you explain to people what you're doing in the airship or the dojo?
Yeah, so usually after the show, at least in 2019, where everything was really hitting the fence, we were meeting for psychic workout of how to survive in the world with all the MK Ultra going around, everything else. And that series has really been a popular tool that people have used, excuse me, for their own growth.
Right.
And so we're just continuing that now. So we're meeting tonight actually at 7, and it's usually an hour and a half, 2 hours. It's a bunch of different people that basically are bringing things to the mat, things they question about their own posture, about how to proceed through something in the world or with themselves and whatnot. And I've been wanting to publish those because I think that this is the new territory. This is the new terrain, is exploring our own feelings, our own posture more. So
Yeah.
by making these things public, I think it's an opportunity for people to learn through voyeuristically watching others
Right.
encounter themselves on the mat and do things.
It's like watching, like, I guess, like a support group
Mhm.
or yeah, I guess a support group would
Yeah.
be like the best analogy I could think of. However, I have to also compliment you on how well you do at holding that as, the leader, because you do a really wonderful job of, giving your opinion, but not saying that your way is the only way, and I think
Mm,
that's quite admirable, especially when people are coming out with something that could be very sensitive or very,
mm.
so yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
You're a great example of humility, so
Well, thanks. I only try, if I'm have any luck, it's only because I'm looking at someone's posture and I'm just wondering how their beliefs could give them a better posture. And sometimes that's thinking closer to how I think, but mostly it's more based on where they're at. I just look at the leak, right? Where's their leak? And can you fix that leak with a change to their current posture? So that way their cosmology gets to stay the same. It does them no good if I say, you have to drop that cosmology. I want you to think about a teddy bear controlling the universe. It's like, and although I got a theory on this, but anyway, it's instead of invading that, right? I
yeah.
want someone to keep using their own tools, but simply to find a better way to hold lumbar number 4, just 3 degrees to the left. What does that do? Oh my God, I see colors. And
Yeah.
that would be the success
Oh,
there.
I like that. It's like, emotional chiropractor.
Yes, exactly right. It's exactly right. Yes. Thank you.
That's very cool. All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming. Thank you, James. And hopefully one of these days I'll be at one of the airships. I'll
I'd
check it
love to
out.
see you. Yeah, we would. Thank you so much.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Bye. Thanks so much.